It is that time of year again, and as 2022 kicks off, it's time to reflect on the many changes that 2021 brought in. Including January of 2022, I've added 54 new credits since I last ranked up my top 20 coasters, so it's long overdue. Now, to give everyone a little taste of my top list, let's really dive into the top 20 of my 173 credits. Now, first things first, I'll give a quick rundown of the honorable mentions. Number 30, Griffon, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. 29, Gatekeeper, Cedar Point. 28, Incredible Hulk, Islands of Adventure. 27, Manta, SeaWorld, Orlando. 26, Kingda, Six Flags Great Adventure. 25, Supernan the Ride, Six Flags New England. 24, Apollo's Chariot, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. 23, Hagrids Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure, Islands of Adventure. 22, Nitro, Six Flags Great Adventure. 21, Boulder Dash, Lake Compounce. Now for the top 20, you'll see 6 coasters by B&M, 8 by Intamin, 5 by RMC, and 1 by GCI. These include 8 rides topping 200 feet, along with 3 gigas that top 300 feet. There are 3 launch coasters, but only 2 wooden, so let's get into it. Number 20, Diamondback at Kings Island. Owner of perhaps the strongest airtime of any B&M Hyper I've ridden, it has that real pure, almost ejector force. Now the ride feels long and it's filled with both that almost ejector and long sustained floater airtime. However, the rattle in the back wing seats and throughout the rest of the train in certain areas is a real noticeable issue that really hurts the re-rideability of the coaster. Where most B&M Hypers are the easiest coasters in the park to marathon, this may require a break every couple rides. It gets bonus points for the beautiful splashdown that can actually get you wet while you ride. Number 19, Orion, Kings Island. Back-to-back King Islands B&Ms, this Giga is just pure fun. It has some intense moments here and there, but it's mostly focused on just being a ride that everyone can love as long as they get past the height. Now, the wave turn doesn't really do anything for me, and the length is the biggest issue with the ride. To be barely longer than Diamondback is what really holds us back from climbing into that 12 to 10 range. Still, I'm happy to have yet another Giga around, and the speed hill is the true highlight besides that amazing drop. Number 18, Fahrenheit, HersheyPark. Now this Intamin may not seem like much compared to the monster pair of B&Ms that came before it, but it just packs everything in. Extremely strong airtime on the drop and speed hill, whippy inversions, and a unique layout that really can't be found anywhere else. This seems like Intamin doing a Eurofighter, but it's just so much better. The only problem is the rattle on the Cobra Roll, and it's a shorter ride, but the pacing is just perfect. Number 17, New Texas Giant, Six Flags Over Texas. The original RMC is the lowest of the 5 I've ridden, but it's one hell of a prototype. This hybrid coaster is a long ride filled with airtime pops and overbanks. It outclasses the Hyper right next door, and it has a strong drop, and it just feels like it's missing those RMC inversions we all come to love. Trade in some of those overbanks for a pair of inversions or 3, and the pacing probably feels a lot better. If it was built today, I probably would guess it would have been Hyper as well, but for now, it's still a great ride. Number 16, Alpengeist, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. Now this was my favorite inverted coaster till last year, and this thing is just a monster. One of the longest feeling drops out there with some real pure intensity through that first half. It's hurt by a mid-course that hits a little too hard, but the wooded setting really boosts this coaster, and it doesn't really shake me up as bad as some people it seems. I just recommend that the front rows for the coaster and you'll probably enjoy it a lot more. Number 15, Skyrush, HersheyPark. Now if intensity was a hypercoaster, it would be Skyrush. Packed into a really small plot and containing 2 legendary airtime moments, this really could benefit from those new intimate trains. As is, the restraints do cause a good amount of discomfort, and the ride has definitely started to show some more shake and rattle as it's finally hit its 10 years, but the drop, turn, and airtime make this an absolutely incredibly memorable ride for me. Number 14, Banshee, Kings Island. Now, the coaster that took my favorite Invert title, Banshee is far from a perfectly smooth ride, and the back was honestly too much for me without a doubt. It really shook me pretty bad. However, in the front, it almost has no rattle, and the pacing makes this a physically draining ride in the best kind of way. It definitely feels like the longest invert in the world. It is. The drop is absolutely nuts, and the inversions back to back in that second half absolutely crush you into the train. If you can make it through the rattle, this is an invert that's really in a class of its own. 13, Stormrunner, HersheyPark. While much smaller than some of its other accelerator siblings, Stormrunner has my favorite launch and some of the best inversions on a launch coaster. Now, it is a really short ride, but the extra elements following the top hat paired with the intense launch really showcase why this is better than the Strata model. Not to mention, I feel like Stormrunner is exponentially smoother than Ka, plus the soft restraints are definitely a big upgrade from those hard plastic ones. Number 12, Jersey Devil Coaster, Six Flags Great Adventure. Another new for 2021 credit, this ride is just something I really need to get more experience on. Luckily, it's at my home park and I expect plenty of more rides. Now, the first half is amazing, with intense airtime, whippy elements, and probably my favorite stall around. However, post mid-course, this did absolutely nothing and was basically a glorified family coaster. Now, I hope riding with the new wheels and lesser mid-course can really keep this ride where it is on the list, because otherwise I kind of expect it to drop a little bit. Number 11, Candymonium, HersheyPark. Formerly my favorite hypercoaster till earlier this month, this ride is everything you expect from a shiny new B&M. Smooth as the chocolate it's painted after, and filled with sustained floater airtime throughout. Now, it does lack some of the punch of Diamondback, but it really makes up for it in the comfort. Personally, the Fountain Finale, I think it's great. I know some don't like it because it doesn't supply that much force, but I really enjoy it, and that speed hill and that off-axis drop are really spectacular. Number 10, Mako, SeaWorld Orlando. Now take everything I just said and add a slight increase in the overall strength of airtime with the slightest dip in smoothness. While Candy has a 5-second airtime hill, it seems like Mako has a 5, a 4, and a 3-second hill. Each hill pops on the coaster, and while the wraparound finale is similar but not quite as scenic and nice as Candy's, I still think not having those seatbelts really opens you up to the experience and feel the full force of the coaster more. Plus, that L shape around the lake is a very nice place to have a coaster. Overall, it just barely edges out the newer Hyper for the first spot in the top 10. Number 9, Wicked Cyclone, Six Flags New England. I think if this was one of my most ridden rides, it would climb higher on the list. The drop is my foot-for-foot favorite around, with some really insane ejector in the back row. Throw in a whippy stall, thigh-crushing airtime, and a pretty extended ride time for a ride of this size. It's just amazing. This can ride a little bit slow, but for the last few seasons, it's been absolutely hauling. My only gripe with the ride is that Six Flags operations taking forever and then stapling you. Easily some of the best hang time on the stall and airtime pairing really in the world. If this was the size of a New Texas Giant, it would easily be in my top 5. Number 8, Millennium Force, Cedar Point. This may be a childhood goggles moment, but I really love this coaster. I need to get back to Cedar Point for re-rides on everything, but this ride just kind of makes me laugh the whole time. You get that intense and airtime filled first drop, some floater here and there, and then just a Sonic the Hedgehog-esque style blitz across the park. Sure, it may fall after re-rides, but hey, it's my favorite coaster, and it's the most iconic in the world. Number 7, Mystic Timbers, Kings Island. Next up is an absolute masterpiece by GCI. Rapid, relentless airtime pops in an out and back send through the woods. It feels like you're making jump cuts through moguls as a skier, and it's really as smooth as any woody around. It may be dwarfed by the park's trio of B&Ms and nowhere near the size of the Beast, but this is by far the best coaster in the park. Throw in a great night ride setting, comfortable trains, and it's just an absolute win. The restraints will tighten on you, but it's by no means the worst kind of train. This is only this low because of the absolute quality above it. Number 6, El Toro, Six Flags Great Adventure. Similar to Wicked Cyclone, I think Toro suffers from the pure amount of rides I've had on it. That being said, it has perhaps the best drop in the world, followed by 2 of the best airtime moments in the world, and then it ends with another world-class airtime hill. The S-bends add in that variety, and the trains are pretty comfortable. It was definitely showing some rough spots near the turnaround before the derail, but hopefully that extensive and necessary track work really has this thing running like new for next season. If I can get back to its earlier years of smoothness, this would easily climb right back into my top 5. Number 5, Twisted Timbers, King's Dominion. If I had to pick a perfect small-scale RMC that I've ridden, it's gotta be this one. Which I prefer Wicked Cyclone's drop, but still, the barrel roll is unique and amazing. The airtime hills back to back to back are as strong as Toro's, just on a smaller scale. But what really surprised me were the turnaround elements. The speed holds through most of the ride, and specifically that cutback is absolutely crazy. The ride is butter smooth throughout, and even with the intense moments, it's such a re-rideable coaster, and I just need more rides on it. I'm dying to get back. Number 4, Maverick, Cedar Point. The first Intamin Blitz is really something special. The only thing this ride doesn't do quote-unquote well is the height, which is just a stat, and the restraints. It's another soft restraint from Intamin, but it could be made so much better with those new lap bars. Now, to feel the whip over that first drop and the airtime throughout, the forces on the Stangle dives, and a more open train would be really perfect. It just feels like such a complete ride, from lift hill to launch to brakes. Not to mention, with almost 4,500 feet of track, it feels like a really long ride too. I just wish that Heartline roll was still there. It would be probably one of the more iconic coaster elements in the world. Number 3, Intimidator 305, Kingdominium. The second of Kingdominion's top 2 is the epitome of doing one thing perfectly, and I mean truly perfect. There is not a better intensity-driven ride out there. It's face-melting, blackout-inducing, adrenaline-pumping ecstasy. The theme is just really fitting, as it feels like you're driving a NASCAR without a windshield. Now, the drop isn't my favorite out of Giga, but it's by no means short, and while the airtime and trims hurt what may have been my number 1, the forced laughs and near shake after my first ride have really stuck with me. If Banshee is a physical experience to ride, then this is like a simulator for a space launch, as I really doubt anyone can ride this enjoyably more than a few times in a row without a break. This is what makes it special. The actual adrenaline and twinge of nervousness aren't really found on many rides for enthusiasts, but this is one of those few. It's just pure thrill. Number 2, Velocicoaster, Islands of Adventure. Maverick is the prototype, but this is the completed concept. The only edge Maverick might have here is intensity, but Velocicoaster is the most complete coaster I've ever ridden. Theming from the queue through the first half of the coaster is the best on any thrill coaster around. Incredible rock work and dinosaurs in your face help make the ride feel even faster. Now, that first launch hits much harder than I expected, and that first half is a lot faster than I expected. Then after those 2 inversions, the second launch punches you in the back and sends you up that 155-foot top hat that feels taller than it really is. The stall and following airtime pops are great, but that final roll feels like you're going to fall out and scrape through water. Now, when I say it really whips you around that roll and other inversions, I remember seeing people go side to side with the freedom of that lap bar and the comfort of the train. Now, it's smooth as it can be, and it just does everything right. Plus, it's an elite night ride with that light package. Number 1, Steel Vengeance, Cedar Point. Still my reigning number 1, it's RMC's world record airtime holder, but this year it's a lot closer. While I need more rides badly, and this could sink down after, the sheer length and amount of powerful airtime keeps this at number 1 for me. One of my top 3 drops starts perhaps the best first half of any coaster, rivaling El Toro. Now, the inversions all hit really well, especially the later ones that really seem to hang you there, and the amount of train inside the structure just adds to the feeling of how long this ride goes on. Now, the mid-course is basically a necessary element to give you a breather to break up this monster. It is relentless. It is as legendary as its reputation holds it, and it is the ride I am dying to re-ride more than any, and that's really why it's at number 1. So there's my top 20. Now, it's a big change from last year, and if you have any questions why some things changed, ask me down below. I love to get into these conversations and explain my opinions. Now, look out for a full video on Velocicoaster and some of these other Florida coasters in the near future. They all really deserve a full breakdown. I will also include rankings in the future Florida trips so you can see where some of the lower ones fell. But just remember, these are my opinions. You know, we all have our own. So till next week, that's all from the shores of Island Coasters.